Assalamu alaikum, welcome to Game Changer. I'm Maryam Zia. Tonight we will be talking about the upcoming US elections. On November 5, American voters will be deciding their next president. When we look at the significance of its elections, of course, its ripple effects will not be important only for America, but it will be felt across the globe for, of course, global economies as well as, of course, global politics. Will it be former President Trump that will return to White House? Of course, time will tell. Or it will be Kamala Harris, potentially making history as the first woman to be elected and to be leading the nation. We will be witnessing in coming days. In today's program, we will be talking about the significance of course, these important US elections, what campaign strategies are, of course, these two candidates are of course utilizing when we look at their campaign strategies, and neck and neck tie between both the candidates. And of course, when we look at the significance of these elections, swing states are going to be of particular and significance importance, and we will be looking at those swing states as well. And what are different dimensions for global politics, for foreign policy and other domestic issues within US in these upcoming elections. We will be looking in all aspects in today's program. To discuss this and more, we are joined in the studios by Mr. Sheharyar, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. We're also joined online by Mr. Faiz Rehman, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. And we're joined online by Mr. Amir Hussain, who is analyst. Welcome to the program. Mr. Faiz Rehman, let me start with you. When we look at these elections, of course, swing states are going to be, of course, significance important. How significant are these swing states in your opinion, specifically when we look at states like Arizona, Georgia, Michigan, in determining the outcome of these elections?
Thank you, Maryam. Good to be on your show. And I think in your intro, you rightly said that whoever is elected, that will be a game changer, so to speak. No reference to your program, but of course it will be a game changer, not just for America, the country that right now I'm sitting from Washington. Good to join you from Washington, D.C. But it will be having a major impact on US, the world economies and politics. The system here in America, the election system is very different from others. We know popular votes do matter, but if a candidate wins popular vote, it doesn't mean that he or she is going to be elected the president. It largely depends on the electoral college, which makes the final determination. About the, at this point right now as we speak, Kamala Harris is leading in popular votes in the country. If elections were to be decided on the basis of popular votes today, she will be the next president of this country.
Right. And how do you compare it to results of 2016 elections? Because that was the same case with Hillary Clinton. She won the popular vote. But of course, when we look at the politics within US, like you rightly pointed out, it largely depends on electoral college.
Yes, Maryam, that's exactly right. And I think it also happened in 2000 when Al Gore ran against George Bush the Jr. And even though Al Gore had won the popular votes, George Bush the Jr. won the presidency because he had won, quote unquote, the electoral college. So, and it just comes down to a few smaller states, as you said in the intro, about 7 of them. All the larger states, for example, California is the largest state by the population in the union, and also New York, Texas, even Florida. These are the states which have been basically voting on certain lines. California has been always a Democratic state. New York has been always a Democratic state. So some of these states where there is a change in populations and demographics, they tend to vote differently in each election cycle. And Michigan is, of course, one of them. So, but if you look at those 7 states, most of those states were won by Joe Biden in 2020. But those 7 states are again into the influx because we know that they may shift either Democratic or Republican. However, out of those seven, at least four states are the ones where Vice President Kamala Harris is leading, even though the margin is
Right,
within the.
right. But Faiz, at the same time, we know that early voting has started in some states, like Florida is one of them, and millions of Americans have already voted. How do you think that this outcome would be impacting the upcoming elections?
That's an important question, and the idea is on both sides actually to make sure that they get out their votes, their voters, their committed voters, because there are, of course, some people may think that, okay, what the heck, since Trump is winning and I'm a Trump voter, so I'm just gonna, sit home because it's not gonna make a difference. I'm just one vote. So both parties are trying their very hard, their best, and basically doing Go TV, which is get out the vote. So there are concerts being held. There are rallies as we speak right now. Trump was speaking with the Latino voters, the Hispanic, big Hispanic community. So yes, the early voting does impact the outcome, and at least it's give us some of the indicators. First, that yes, people are committed. Those who are going out and voting early, again, it's part of a system here that you can vote. No, you don't have to wait until the day of the elections. You can still go out based on your own convenience and vote for your candidate. So this is important. I mean, when they opened this early voting in Georgia, it was a record-breaking turnout just for the early voting. So I think, again, I'm sure you're going to ask that question, regardless who's going to win. It will largely depend on the voters who will basically go out, number one. Number two, the race is so tight that these 7 states, including Michigan. Michigan is, by the way, why I'm saying Michigan again and again, because Michigan is very important. In Michigan, there are several Arab Muslims, Muslim voters. They have been voting for the Democratic Party, but because of their dissatisfaction with the Biden administration on the Middle East policy, they're still weighing whether they're going to either vote for the Democrat or they're going to just sit out. If they sit out, a majority of them, I think Kamala Harris will lose Michigan, and that will impact
Right. That remains an important question. Let me include Mr. Amir Hussain into the discussion. Amir, when we look at the poll surveys that are coming in at this point in time, the registered voter, about 47% of registered voters of both the parties, Democrats and Republicans, are of course are going to be voting for their particular candidates. How do you think the undecisive voters are significant at this point in time, and what kind of strategies do you see both candidates are going to be going towards in attracting those voters?
Well, Maryam, you see, the both candidates have different political, outreach. In particular, when they go out to the people, they actually have different strategies. For example, Kamala Harris will be mostly focusing on the investment in small businesses, trying to build, middle class basis, because she herself belongs to the middle class, and she very rightly put in her all discussions that she will be focusing on tax reduction, trying to build protection for the middle classes who are actually suffering, and who have been, according to her, they have been suffering under the previous Trump regime. On the other hand, President Trump would be focusing more on the white middle classes, where he thinks that it is all about immigration issues. So the criminals are coming to, rule the streets of the country, and we would not allow anybody from coming outside to snatch our jobs. So he is coming out with a different message for, in particular, the white middle classes in the United States. So I think both have their own strengths. For example, Kamala Harris would also be focusing on abortion rights, particular rights of women, and also more progressive outlook towards minorities and the immigrants, in particular the Africans and Muslims. And Trump would also have some attraction from the conservative Muslim classes, for example, on abortion rights, on transgender issues. So there is a huge competition coming up, because as we look at the polls are completely changing. As we see, 3 or 4 weeks ago, Kamala Harris was really on lead in different in swing states in particular. Now the margin has been narrowed to significantly from three percentage to now less than 1%. I think this shows that there is also some changes in the trend, but polls would not always determine the day the people will come out to vote.
Right, right.
I
And
think
let me,
this,
right, please go ahead.
yeah, okay, that's all right from my side.
Right. Okay. Okay. Let me take the same point to Sheharyar. Sheharyar, when we look at these polls, surveys coming in, with 47% of the registered voters going to be, of course, voting for their particular candidate. How do you think this is going to be impacting leading up to the voting day on November 5th,
So,
especially when we talk about the voter sentiment?
So, Maryam, when it comes to voter sentiment and the polls and the way the whole race is looking right now, I don't think there's like a lot of difference between Kamala Harris and Trump. Mostly in most of the states, 1 or 2 percentage points, but the margin of error is also like around 4%. So this basically means they're like going neck to neck. And as Faiz Rehman Saab mentioned, in like swing states, especially if you look at Michigan, the latest polls basically showed that Trump had a 2 to 3 percentage point lead in swing states where there are like a lot of like minority voters, there are a lot of Arab voters, Muslim voters, and they're not particularly happy with the way the Biden administration has handled the Middle Eastern issue and the whole genocide that's happening in Gaza. So I think a lot of voters either would sit out in that state, or there's like also an emerging trend in which a lot of these conservative voters or Muslim votes, as you can say, would probably even side with Trump, even though Trump has historically been very pro-Israel, but he has also been anti-war as well. So there is this perception amongst the American voters that Trump is not pro-war, and he wants to take the US out of a lot of conflicts in the Middle East, especially in the Ukraine as well. So I think a lot of like Muslim voters are planning,
especially
or
Arab
voters as well. They're very
Arab
disappointed.
American voters are going to be, of course, latest surveys are showing that they are now inclined towards Trump. But at the same time, Mr. Faiz, when we look at the situation, Kamala Harris has, of course, raised over $1 billion, especially in the last stretch of fundraising. How do you see this as compared to, of course, former President Donald Trump's fundraising strategy, especially, of course, Joe Biden dropped out of the race?
Look at her campaign. I think she joined the campaign very late because President Biden was still in the race and he had to withdraw. And since then, of course, you know, she has energized the campaign. She has raised lots of money. And she has actually come out as a very, very strong person, not just a candidate, but, you know, if you look at her body language, her, you know, stress, the strength and the message that she's been kind of, you know, sending all around the country has been received with a lot of surprise and with actually with some good surprise. So she has made that big difference on the campaigns overall. Yes, but I just want to go back to Sheharyar's point about Trump being. I mean, I think he has rightly said that yes, of course, there are some Pakistanis and Muslims and Arabs who think that because Biden has been so sided with the Israelis in annihilating the Gazans and now the Lebanese, and Trump is kind of being very quiet, quote unquote, or presumably, they think that they're going to vote Trump because he's not pro-war. That's because this is I'm saying this. This is I'm not contradicting Sheharyar. I'm saying this because of the benefit of our viewers. This is not totally true. Trump has actually come out and said to Netanyahu that Biden is holding you back. I will not hold you back. You should go all the way and finish it once for all. So it's not going to be a very different policy. What you're saying, yes, of course, Biden has done not enough, but at least there's some restraints, some not acceptable to me as a Pakistani, or a lot of other Pakistani Americans or Muslim Americans. But at the same time, Trump is no angel, and he's not gonna, rein in Netanyahu and his government when it comes to the Palestinians and the Lebanese and countries around that. Even his policy for Iran. So I think, yes,
right, and
go ahead.
Mr. Faiz, when we look at these diverging foreign policies of both the candidates, where Kamala Harris says she's going to be supporting Ukraine, while Trump is saying that he's going to be pulling out and, of course, stop sending more troops and support to Ukraine. So how do you see these foreign policy aspects are going to be playing out, especially when we look at the voters in these swing states?
Yes, Ukraine is a very sensitive issue when it comes to America and Europe. And that's why there's a big anxiety among the European leaders. If Trump wins, there'll be a sea change of policy when it comes to Ukraine, Russia, and Europe. And Europe will be the major loser in that policy change. And that's why you see a lot of anxiety and a lot of worries among those leaders. But, I think, is it good for the world? Is it okay for Putin to basically win that war or crush Ukraine? I don't think Trump is saying that. What Trump is saying, he's not gonna let Putin win or Ukraine lose. He basically wants to end that conflict. Whatever has happened has happened. Let's just cease fire and go back to, or at least, whatever territories Putin has won so far, we'll just stay there and we'll finish the war. And that's not an acceptable point for the Europeans and for most of Americans, actually. I don't think there's one point, however, where most Americans support Trump, is that they don't want him, or they don't want the government to send hundreds of billions of dollars to Ukraine, where they know Ukraine and the Ukrainian government is one of the most corrupt governments in the world. I mean, it's a corrupt country. The money that's going out to them from America at the expense of the taxpayers, people like me and millions of us, it's not going exactly to make a difference in the winning or losing the war. Is going to actually basically line the pockets of the corrupt Ukrainian leaders. So these are some of the points that people do consider. And as I said before, even here internally, domestically in the US and out there in Europe, there are anxieties, and well-founded anxieties actually, when it comes to the possible policy changes if Trump wins. But I don't think it will be so easy for Trump to just go ahead and make those policies without having considered all the implications.
That remains an important aspect. And Mr. Amir, when we look at this situation, Kamala Harris has also been criticized for her vague optimism and not providing clear policies. How do you view this, and what kind of policies, of course, do you see coming from her party in the coming days?
Well, I think generally, if we look at the Democrats and Republicans, they have a clear line of policies for domestic politics and economy. Uh, Kamala Harris is mostly focusing on particular, immigrant classes within society who have a substantial support and vote bank in the United States. And but you are very right that she has not coming up. She has not come up with a very strong narrative which will provide a roadmap for a
Going to be
different.
produce, of course, providing, of course, reducing inflation. Like, there is no particular plan when we talk about the policy. It is very vague at this point in time.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, but I think the American politics is Faiz Rahman Sahab has outlined very well. So there are two dimensions. The international relations matter a lot because the American people really think that in when the economy needs a lot of attention internally, they need a lot of attention in terms of tax reforms. Bringing employment to the people and a lot of different things. So this introversion is also important for any presidential candidate to talk about them, because if you look at the Trump from the outset is conservative, and he shows his strength in expressing this conservatism internally. It creates a lot of sense for the ordinary Americans that we should not go for wars, we should not engage with Iran, we should not engage with China, and we have to take care of our own economy. On the other hand, Kamala Harris has some sort of ambiguity in terms of she tends to support the American stance on Ukraine at the same time, but she is also evading the old discussion on Israel and what is going on in Iran and what is the Middle Eastern policy. So she has some ambiguity, and that also creates a lot of confusion among the voters. And if we look at the voter swing, the poll swings, it also tells you something that the Americans are now increasingly looking into concrete statements coming from the presidential candidates who will actually make more sense when the elections will come closer. In particular, those 7 swing states where we know that in Pennsylvania we have a big edge for Kamala Harris for 0.6 percentage by now, but again, in Michigan and other states, in Georgia in particular, we see that the Trump is coming, up with his own an assertion which is more into, trying to create buy-ins with the middle classes, in particular the white middle classes. I think this is going to be a very difficult and
Right,
tough
and
time.
let me take the same question to Sheharyar. Sheharyar, when we look at, of course, Trump's strategy, it is very unprecedented that former President Trump is now focusing on indecisive, infrequent voters, especially in rural areas and in white communities. How do you see this strategy is different from his previous campaigns?
So this time around, the voter patterns or the issues that matter to the American voters are more internal rather than foreign policy issues. And historically, the US voters have voted more towards the economies, job, what the healthcare situation would be, immigration. There's also climate change, social issues like transgender rights and women rights. So these are the areas which are in particular. Students are more concerned about how the economy will be able to absorb them, the jobs opportunities that are there. There's like a lot of discussions on student loans. The Democrats have a very progressive policy towards it. They are also talking about $100 billion cut in like forgiveness of student loans. Trump historically has followed policies which are very neoliberal in nature, and they're very pro-corporate sector and like pro-business. So his approach towards reinvigorating the American economy are like quite different. He wants to invest more into the American economy That is why the perception appears that Trump historically has been very anti-war and he wants to spend more into rebuilding the American economy. Another point that is very important is the approach that the Democrats have when it comes to China, and the approach that the Trump administration would have. Historically, President Trump in his previous tenure and right now as well is talking about a 10% import tariff across the board on any products or products that are imported from China. When it comes to Kamala Harris and the Biden administration right now, they basically are very selective. They're talking about tariffs on certain commodities like steel, which they basically say are not developed using best practices. So when it comes to foreign policy, there's also a discussion on whether the security dynamics in the South China Sea, how they would be impacting US foreign policy when it comes to China. When it comes to the question of Taiwan, whether Chinese would aggressively want to take Taiwan over. And in that case, both Harris and Trump are very vague about their response, whether the US would want to take part in that conflict or not. When it comes to other public sector spendings, that's an area where there's like a lot of discussion on like social housing, affordable healthcare. So both candidates have a very different approach towards it. When it comes to Kamala Harris and her team, they are more on progressive taxing and taxing the rich to basically fulfill the shortfalls that are there in basically supporting the social security systems. When it comes to Trump, he has a more neoliberal economic policy in which he wants to create more housing, build more housing, do more construction, and he's not in the favor of giving out handouts or gifts. Even when it comes to the Ukraine issue as well, Trump has very openly said that if he comes into power, his support to Ukraine would be conditional.
Right.
And he would be giving them loans and not gifts when it comes to any conflict that is taking place between Russia and Ukraine.
Right, and of course, when we look at Mr. Faiz, Trump's stance, especially on migration, Trump promises for mass deportations and militarized immigration. How do you think this is going to be, of course, these hardline immigration policies are going to be resonating with the voters?
Well, his position on immigration is just horrible. We have seen this in the previous administration, his administration, and now he's promising to actually use US military for the enemy within. Basically, in a dog whistle way, saying that those who are supposedly doing something wrong against his party or his administration, they're supposed to be enemy within, and he's going to use the military. And you pointed out that the mass deportation, whether it's possible or not, it's just part of their agenda that they would, on first day, his vice presidential candidate, J.D. Vance, has said it publicly that, they would start with deporting 1 million and then move from 1 million to the next million. So I don't think that's possible. This country is the country of immigrants. There are, some of the jobs that only immigrants do. In high tech, immigrants basically dominate. There are, businesses that are run by the immigrants. So it's, yes, he's talking about illegal immigrants.
Mr. Faiz, at the same time, is this a priority that voters are going to be considering when they are going out on election day?
I think it's a fear. It's a fear mongering. What he's trying to do. He's just accusing the Asian immigrants of eating people's pets, like their dogs, their cats in their yard, in their front yards, in their front lawns. So and this has been a tactic for the Republican Party over the years, that they basically try to create this air in the electorate, by fear mongering, so that people say, okay, these immigrants probably going to take the country over. And if you look at the composition of the Trump's campaign, Elon Musk, the richest man in the world, the founder of Tesla electric cars. And I mean, of course, I mean he's a very intelligent, very bright man, but he is totally siding with Trump. And his main idea is, in not so many words, but he's basically talking about whites diminishing their populations, not just in this country, but around the world. So he wants the whites, he's not saying whites, but he's saying, that's what he means, that, whites should produce more babies. There's a, birth rate going down, and immigrants is going to take over this country. And from, now, maybe within the next 20, 30 years, whites would be in the minority. And that's a major, major concern and fear-mongering point, one of the points in the campaign, in the Trump campaign, that people are actually getting attracted to.
When we talk about, of course, these significant donors, like you alluded to, Elon Musk, we also know that recently he announced that he is going to be awarding $1 million to one of the registered voters. So is it, of course, we know that many of the many commentators are saying that it is illegal under the US law. How do you view these kind of strategies that a Trump team is using by utilizing the donors in this way?
Yeah, so basically he is planning, he has promised, and actually he's already done it. Some people have won this lottery. So he has $1 million daily lottery for the Trump voters, those who go out and they will win a lottery, $1 million. So Pennsylvania governor, who is basically a Democratic governor, Shapiro, he has come out and he has basically he's been looking into some of the legal implications of this offer. I'm not a legal person, so I don't know exactly how it's going to work out, but there are certain doubts that this can't be just legal, because this basically you're trying to buy your voters by throwing out this humongous amounts of money in a state which is very crucial to both parties. Basically, if they lose Pennsylvania, I don't think that person is going to be our next president.
Right. And lastly, Mr. Amir, final word on how could a Harris or a Trump victory reshape their parties, and also what does it mean for US politics and, of course, politics and economies of the world?
Well, I think the American politics is always, based on fundamental premise that they need a president who is a character as usual. They want someone who can take up business as usual. So President Trump is a disruptor. So he has been doing disruptive things. If President Trump comes into power, it will create a lot of issues on international scenes for the United States of America. And of course, if he follows what he says, would be disastrous even for Americans. I don't know, personally, I believe that the Kamala Harris are Republican, the Democrats have better and balanced view on international relations. And I think, but they have to articulate, they have to become more assertive, whatever they say, like Trump is saying openly, and they have to be concrete. They should come up with concrete statements, and I think the world needs a balanced and a mature leadership coming to power in the United States. They don't need disruptors. They don't need someone who can, who is xenophobic, who wants to create a lot of fuss, who wants to incriminate all the immigrants who are working in America.
Right. I thank all of my panelists for joining me in today's program. And of course, we know that US elections outcomes will not only impact America, but also its effects will be implemented and will be seen in coming days in global economies and global affairs as well. That's all from Game Changer tonight. Take care. Allah Hafiz.